Welcome to the Real Board Loft. I'm Trip Foreman, and this is the Vernor Pitbull. David Vernor designed this board as a step-up complement to the Vernor Mini Simmons. And if you look at this board, it actually has a lot of Mini Simmons in it, especially when you're looking at the front half of the board, from the nose back to about the midsection of the board. Looking at the nose, it has a lot of width up forward. It also has that rolled Vernor rail and the displacement hull that made the Mini Simmons so popular in his line. When you get to the back half of the board, that's where it's taking the Mini Simmons feel and adapting it to waves that are curvier and have a lot more speed. So in the back half of the board, from here down, if you're looking at a Mini Simmons, the tail of the board would be about this wide. And so bringing the tail in quite a bit. Also, you've got a bump wing right here, which is real popular on a lot of small to medium wave shortboards. And then you also have just a little bit of V. Subtle concave in between the stringer and the rail, but just a slight V the whole way through the back of the board. So what this board's doing is it's going to give you that Mini Simmons paddle, the Mini Simmons glide, and the Mini Simmons feel of the rail, but adapt it to a wave that's a lot more powerful. So where the Mini Simmons just has a huge gas pedal on the back of the board for creating speed that the wave doesn't necessarily have, this board, the Pitbull, takes away that gas pedal and gives you a much more neutral feel underneath the back of your foot. That's going to adapt that board to fit in a rounder, faster, more powerful wave, and still give you that Mini Simmons feeling in the front. If you like a Mini Simmons, and then you go to any other board in your quiver that David didn't make, there's always a transition. So this way, if you have the Mini Simmons and you like it and you're riding it a lot, and you want to have a more conventional board for better waves, this is a good board to check out because it's an easy board to transition back and forth with, especially since the forward half of the board is very Mini Simmons-esque. The other board that David makes that's a great complement to a Mini Simmons is it's called the Silver Bullet 2, and we'll be talking a little bit more about that in its own review. Looking at the board, comparing it to a Mini Simmons, it does have the forward half of a Mini Simmons, but it is a little bit more pulled in the nose, so the nose is narrower. It has a little bit more rocker up front. It has that same belly through the board, and just making it the glide, that feel, the way that the hull feels through the water, the displacement hull is very, very similar to that board. In a lot of David's boards, you can get what's called just like a reinforcement on the rail or a grab handle right here, and this does two different things. One is that when you're duck diving the board, your thumbs fit right down into that groove, and so if you're going underneath a lot of white water or the lips landing on some part of your body, it's less likely for your thumbs to blow off the rails. Also, it allows you to put a little bit more reinforcement on the rail and strengthen the board up to the rails, typically where a board would break or buckle first or crack first, and by having that little bit of an I-beam, it gives you a little bit more strength right there. So that's what you're seeing on the rails. He does this on the Pitbull. He does it on the new shortboard model called the Chef. It's also available custom on any board that he makes. Looking at the tail of the board, or the business end of the board, you can see this tail, especially you look at it this way where it's clean without wax on it, it's really similar to like what you would see on a lot of small to medium wave performance shortboards, and the dimensions being pretty close. You can see that there's definitely a bump right about here in the outline, and then it gives you a little bit of an elbow to get that pivot from in the turn when you're looking for that, and just brings it into a standard tri-fin setup, standard tri-fin squash tail. So if you come from a standard tri-fin squash tail upbringing and you really like your Mini Simmons, but you want something a little bit more conventional to complement your Mini Simmons in better surf, this is definitely going to be a good pick to check out. Underneath your feet, the Vector Net carbon reinforcement, you can see not only is it under where your pad is and under where you are when you're all the way back, it's all the way a little bit forward too, because a lot of times people will have their foot just forward of the pad, and so David extends it a little bit further forward just to give you more reinforcement where that hard heel turn is going to be coming around. So a really good board. I found this board to work better in bigger surf. It still has some low end when you need it, but once you have the Mini Simmons, you're spoiled for life on the ultra low end. But in bigger surf, it worked well. The only thing that it didn't really like was really hollow surf. So like if it's, we had some sessions up at S-turns here where it's sucking basically below sea level, and there's a lot of like kind of free falling into waves or pig dogging into waves where you're free falling. And what happens in the turn is a lot of times when you would reconnect, the first thing to reconnect would be the nose, the wider nose, and then the tail would slide out a little bit before it engaged. In that type of surf, I think something a little bit more conventional without the really wide front is going to handle that a lot better. But in anything shy of that, this board seemed to work really well, and it also had the feeling that you could harness both types of performance when you needed them. So if there was a real flat, soft, mini Simmons section, you could get forward on the board, put your back foot here, your front foot and lean forward onto the full mini Simmons part of this board and get that glide and trim to the mini Simmons, and then get back on the board when you got more into the critical part of the wave. Another wave we have here at the end of Mac Oka was like that, where you would drop in on the outside of the wave, and then it would get a flat section, and then it would just bowl out to explosion on the inside. So you could kind of work both ends of the board and to your advantage, and really harness what was in the board's design. So it's a great board. It's called the Vernor Pitbull. This one that we have here is in his high-end construction. It's Marco EPS foam blank with Resin Research epoxy resin. One of the things you'll find on all David Vernor's higher end EPS epoxy boards is this Vernor I-beam suspension system. You can find it on his boards when you see this distinctive black V on the bottom of the board. A lot of people think that this is just, some people actually even think it's just a Vernor logo, the V logo. But what it is inside the board, David routes a very thin groove from the rail through both fin boxes to the center line, and then in the other direction out to the other rail. Drops in 1 1/16 inch deep stringer down into the board of carbon going in both directions, and then caps it with a carbon strip in both directions. Also on these rail boxes, on the forward rail boxes, he's using the Futures jig and router bit to cut away a little bit of the stringer and actually tie those boxes, both the rail boxes and then also the trailer box, into those carbon stringers, so that it ties it all in as one and then caps it with that carbon strip. What this is doing is it's reducing or eliminating the torsional flex of the board. So that torsional flex is where you're bleeding your speed and losing a lot of forward drive and forward speed from your surfboard. This I-beam system reduces or eliminates all of that flex and transfers it all into down the line speed. So check it out, that's what this V is, and that's what's actually happening underneath that carbon strip that you can't see. David also recommends, if you want to get even more speed from your board, to use the Futures Vector foiled fins, which has a positive foil on the outside and a negative foil on the inside on the side fins, and that's going to tie in with this system really well and give you even more speed out of this I-beam suspension system. So his high-end construction it's more expensive than his standard PU poly, but you get the better blank, you get the better resin, you get the vector mesh, and then you also get the suspension system, so it's worth it. I mean, you get more out of every session, and then the board lasts a lot more sessions as well. So definitely worth springing for the better construction. So Vernor Pitbull. If you have any more questions about this board or any other Vernors, you can call us at the shop, 252-987-2000 or 6000. You want to call us at 6000. 252-987-6000. You can call 2000, but then you're gonna get the restaurant. You probably order I'd order a Mount Gay Extra Old on the rocks. Probably pretty good. And or you can check out our website, realwatersports.com/surfing. Thanks for tuning in.